episode 700. Wow. I was told by our marketing manager, Sean, that this is a milestone that we should celebrate. And I wasn't really sure. At what point do you start celebrating milestones in podcasting? I think 50 episodes makes sense, 100 episodes, maybe 500 episodes. But after 500, when do you start celebrating these milestones? I thought maybe 750, 1000 made sense. But I'm going to take our marketing manager's word for it. So here I am celebrating episode 700. At least I think it's 700. Some of the podcasting platforms say that we've recorded over 700 episodes. I haven't got to the bottom of why that is yet. Anyway, in recognition of what is probably our 700th episode, a special shout out to our previous hosts, Kelvin Newman, who got this podcast started, Andy White, who hosted this podcast for a really long time, all of the guests that have been on to make this podcast a fun place to be, and of course, you, our listeners. It remains the case that I'd love to learn more about you all. I hope you're here in 700 episodes time. And if you'd like to shape the future of the next 700 episodes, reach out to us, give us your feedback, give us your guest suggestions, tell us which topics you want us to talk about. We love to hear it all. You can reach us with anything at marketing@sitevisibility.com. Our website is sitevisibility.co.uk, or find me on LinkedIn, Scott Colnut, and pop me a message. Now on to this week's episode. In today's episode, I'm joined by Bryan Clayton, founder of GreenPal. GreenPal is an innovative online marketplace that's been dubbed the Uber for lawn care by Entrepreneur magazine. GreenPal currently services over 300,000 active customers with ambitions to make that number 1 million. Prior to launching GreenPal, Bryan successfully exited his first company, Peachtree Inc., growing the business to over 10 million in annual revenue before being acquired by Lusa Holdings in 2013. In this episode, Bryan shares some of his experience and entrepreneurial lessons from the landscaping industry across Peachtree and GreenPal. He shares some important insights on the differences between self-learning and academic learning, and he shares his thoughts on what it takes to build a successful business like GreenPal in the sharing economy. Enjoy the episode.
This is Internet Marketing.
I'd like you to describe a little bit about GreenPal and your day-to-day role at GreenPal as it stands today.
Yeah, sounds good. So thanks, Scott. GreenPal is a marketplace and mobile app that works like DoorDash or Postmates or Uber, but for lawn care services. And so my day-to-day job is to make sure the marketplace is humming. We basically connect buyers and sellers. So people who need lawn mowing services, we tee them up and get them connected really fast with people who do lawn mowing services. And so we operate in every city in the United States. And so we're always looking to match supply and demand and making sure we have enough suppliers, making sure we have enough liquidity, and making sure transactions are running smoothly. And also, growth and SEO is a big part of that. How are we ranking for keywords that we're targeting in these metropolitan areas? That's a big part of my day to day as well, is monitoring how our SEO efforts are doing. And because we're really the vibrancy of our marketplace is a function of how much traffic we can garner and how much signups we can tee up for our vendor partners. And so if we're not doing that, we're not delivering value to them. And so that's a big part of what I do. So I guess you could say my official roles are managing the marketplace and then also managing the growth teams.
Are those roles that you want to do? So do you really enjoy being involved in those aspects?
It's a really good question. So my first business was actually a landscaping company. I built a landscaping business from just me and a push mower to me and 150 employees. And so, and eventually getting that business over 8 figures a year in revenue. And then it was acquired in 2013. So after I sold that business, I took some time off and got bored and thought, well, what am I going to do now? And I thought, well, maybe somebody's going to build a mobile app that works like Uber for lawn care services. And why can't that be me? Why can't I lead that? And so I recruited 2 co-founders and we started working on the idea. And I made a promise to myself that from that day forward, that I was just going to do whatever it was I wanted to do. And I was going to have fun doing it. And I didn't want to go through the grind starting a company all over again and not have fun and like literally like chew glass for 5 years. So for 10 years, GreenPal's a 10-year overnight success. There's been some 100-hour weeks, but I haven't worked a day in 10 years. It really has been what I wanted to do. So I have kind of naturally settled into the two hats, I guess you could say, that I enjoy doing. So I enjoy seeing people using the platform, seeing people getting value from what we've built, and helping small business owners in this space grow is really why I get out of bed in the morning. So every day we get stories from, hey, because of GreenPal, I was able to put a down payment on a house, or I was able to pay off student loan debt, or I was able to pay off some medical debt. Or it's a big one, I was able to buy a riding lawnmower. That's a big level up in this business. A commercial riding lawnmower is like 15 grand. And so these moments where we're able to help people who make their living in the landscaping industry improve their livelihood is why I do what I do. It's why my team does what we do, and I enjoy it. So yeah, I enjoy these roles, and I'm going to keep doing them so long as I'm halfway good at them and I'm having fun.
So you seem to really enjoy the marketing aspect and like being hands-on involved in the practical aspects of marketing. Is that correct?
Yeah, that's what I gravitate towards. I think when you're starting a tech company like this, ideally you should get like a hacker and a hustler. That's what Paul Graham says. Get a hacker and a hustler. So you get a hustler, somebody who's just driven to move the project forward, who's sales oriented, and you get a hacker who knows the technical execution side of it. When we first started GreenPal, we had 3 hustlers. We didn't have any hackers. So we had to learn the hacker side. We had to teach ourselves how to write software, teach ourselves how to build a mobile app, teach ourselves how to write code. And that took like 3 years. And so we kind of became the hacker side. But as time went on and we started to make a little bit of money and I could reinvest in building a team, I was able to build and delegate the development side of it because I'm not naturally good at that, and then focus on the distribution and marketing side of it, which I'm also not very good at, but I guess I enjoy doing that better.
With that aspect of hacking and those early days of kind of grinding, I guess building an MVP, how are you teaching yourself? Have you got any kind of resources or tips for people out there just for how to stay motivated when you're learning and going through that process?
It certainly is a challenge. One of the things that I enjoyed in my first business, and I didn't realize it was happening at the time. So I spent 15 years in the landscaping business as an operator, and just me as a push mower as a teenager mowing yards, eventually with 150 employees. And one thing that was happening was every year or two, I was evolving and growing into a whole new person. I was having to learn skills, whether it be leadership, management, basic accounting, basic business strategy, marketing, all of these things. And so the business was like enriching my life, causing me to learn and take on new skills that I never would have learned in a million years. Mm-hmm. And I think passively, I didn't know it at the time, but that was rewarding. That was fulfilling to me. And so when I sold the business, that was now gone. And it was like, almost like I had this weird, almost like identity crisis. Like, man, I don't have this thing causing me to move forward in life. And I don't have this thing that's causing me to be better. And so now that was gone. And so I think that's what attracted me to get back into the game and try to build a tech company, try to build a marketplace. And so I kind of knew that. And so I knew that, okay, well, there's going to be challenges. There's, you're going to have to grow and learn the tooling and the skill sets you need. That didn't make it any more fun or any easier, but I knew that going in. And as time went on, I realized that to not believe your own BS. So, you may not have the title of engineer, but that doesn't mean you can't learn the 80-20 of some basic code and whether it be front end or back end. You may not have the title of designer, but it doesn't mean you can't learn like the 80-20 of what good UX and good UI looks like and be dangerous. And so as I would like take all of my nights and weekends just poring over YouTube University, every blog post I could get my hands on, courses on Udemy, you name it, I began to like get that feeling all over again. Like, man, 6 months ago, I couldn't even read this code. And now I'm writing it. Like, this is really cool. It didn't make it any more fun, but at least it was rewarding in that way. And so you kind of realize, like, actually, you don't have to ask for permission. You can learn anything you need to learn to play this game. And that is one thing that kind of drove me forward. The other thing was, when I started my second company, I made two decisions. I told you I decided I was going to do whatever I wanted to do and have fun doing it. But then I also made a second decision of, I was always going to be working on my best idea. And so fortunately, I'm not terribly creative. I've had one good idea in a decade. And it's like, you should be able to, like, get lawn mowing done by pushing a button. And that's it. I'm still a decade in working on that. How do we make lawn care faster, quicker, cheaper, smoother, more reliable, more seamless, more delightful for both sides of the transaction? And so we're still working on the same problems. And so that, like, by default, this is what we're doing, kind of helped take care of a lot of, like, the internal dialogue. Am I doing the right thing? This is going slow. I'm not learning this fast enough. It kind of, like, just by default, you're just going to be grinding it out. By default, you're going to be working on yourself. And then the third thing, third point I'll make, and then I'll shut up about this, is in business, you're going to be doing three things at once at all time. You're working in the business. So in our case, making sure the marketplace is running, making sure that buyers and sellers are getting matched up, making sure that technically, like, at a technical level, that the site is working. So you're working in the business, and then you're working on the business. What is our marketing strategy? What is our employee training strategy? What is our culture strategy look like? How do we solve all of these problems we're facing on an ongoing basis over and over again? What is our strategy? What is our standard operating procedures? Like, all of these things, you're working on the business. And then the third thing is, you're working on yourself. What are the skills I need to get to the next level of the game? Where am I the bottleneck in the organization? Is my leadership lacking? At a tactical level, am I the choke point because I don't understand certain parts from a technical level of what's going on? From an economic level, like, we run a marketplace, so in theory, we kind of, like, have to understand economic theory at a certain level. Like, when somebody signs up on our platform, we deliver them the spot price for what lawn care services cost for their yard. And so I had to study economics for like 6 months to wrap my head around some of those theories. So you're always working on yourself, and that's kind of block and tackling for whatever challenges the business is facing at that moment, and you're leading the business through it.
You said something about the realization that you didn't need permission to learn as you were working at Peachtree before you actually launched GreenPal. That's always really interesting to me. So I'm actually now interested in the time prior to Peachtree. Did you have an academic background of any description, like university, college? What was that like for you?
Yeah, so that was kind of the impetus for growing that business. I tried to get scholarships. I didn't have the money to go to school. I wanted to go to business school, and so I just mowed yards to pay my tuition. And this was back before Joe Biden was paying everybody's college bills, and you had to like, you had to take on a bunch of student loan debt or pay the bill somehow. And so for me, that was motivating to mow yards. And so I would cut grass all day long and then go to school at night. And my classmates hated me because I would come in smelling like gasoline and grass clippings all over me, like underneath the desk where I was sitting was literally like grass clippings all over the floor every day. But I did that for like 6 years and got a degree in business administration. But it was this weird thing because I was running a pretty decently sized small business while in school. So by the time I graduated, I think I had 5 employees and we were doing $500K a year, maybe $700K a year. So it wasn't a big business, but it was a decent little small business. And as I'm running a small business and in business school, there's all of this like disconnect between the things I was experiencing and the theory that was taught in school and the things that I was learning from other successful business owners in practice versus what I was learning in school. And I decided after I graduated, I was like, man, that was almost a waste of time because being a contractor and growing a business I'm from Nashville, Tennessee, so the region is very vibrant, all kinds of new activity, and I've met so many blue collar millionaires. Whether it be a guy who was investing in real estate, to a guy selling insurance, to another guy who had 10 dump trucks. All of them were very successful and wealthy in their own right, and I would learn from them. I would learn from their business acumen, and those kind of like rules of thumb. Those things they were doing were vastly different than what I was learning in business school. And so what I decided was that I needed to continue to learn, but I had to learn the right way. I had to learn from practitioners, people that were doing what it is I wanted to do, other operators in other bigger markets than Nashville. I would go to like Chicago or LA or Miami, and I would learn from like $50-75 million a year companies in this industry and apply it to my little landscaping business in Nashville. And so I decided to keep learning and to keep punching above my weight, but to learn from people who are actually doing what it is I wanted to do. And I still try to do this today with GreenPal. We're the nation's largest marketplace for lawn care services in the United States, but we're still not a household name in the United States. We want to be in the same conversation as an Instacart, a DoorDash, an Uber. And so I'm learning from these other marketplaces. How do they manage liquidity? How do they attract buyers and sellers to the platform? How do they get people that have fallen out of the funnel and no longer are using the platform to re-engage with it, and all of these things. I'm always trying to learn from people who are doing what it is that I'm trying to do.
That process of accelerating your learning by looking at other companies that were doing well and then trying to just really take inspiration and education from them. How are you doing that? Because you talked there about traveling from different states, but it's not like you can just call up the CEO of Uber and say, "Hey, I want to learn what you're doing." So how exactly were you doing that?
It's a great question, Scott. So, the concept of mentorship and asynchronous mentorship. So, I can't hit up Travis Kalanick, who is the CEO and co-founder of Uber. He was replaced about 4 or 5 years ago, but he's the guy who led the team get it started. And I can't call him up and say, "Hey, man, I want to learn how did you guys get your first 100 drivers?" But I can like consume every spoken word Travis has ever said, like on podcasts, in conference fireside chats, and on YouTube, and especially like rewinding back to 2009 when they were first getting the company going, and everything everybody ever said, whether it be investors into the company and all of that. So and that's something I've done. I've consumed every spoken word that probably a dozen to 20 different founders have ever said, because I want to learn what is it that they did in their space that I can apply to my humble little space of lawn care. So that's one thing I do. So asynchronous mentorship. There's 20 different mentors I have who have never met me. And that's possible today. Back when I was building a landscaping company in 2002, you would have to buy cassette tapes where you would listen to somebody speak at a conference somewhere. And so you would mail a check in for $500 and get some cassette tapes back. And so I would do that then, but nowadays it's so much easier. There's literally no excuse. And so that's one way I do it. The other thing I've done that's been tremendously helpful, because GreenPal is self-funded. We're a bootstrap startup. We've never taken a dime of outside capital, and we've had to grow the business off of its own revenues. And in the early days when we didn't have any idea what the hell we were doing, I had never built a product, a tech product. I had never managed or orchestrated a marketplace. And so I was paranoid and scared, and I let that paranoia cause me to try to learn and figure it out and figure out what the next moves were, and to learn from people who were already doing it. There was no other marketplace for lawn care, but I could drive. So I drove for Uber. I delivered groceries on Instacart. I delivered Chinese food on DoorDash. In the United States, we have a couple platforms for pet care. One is called WAG and one is called Rover. and I signed up on both of those and walked dogs on those, and babysat dogs on those. I rent a spare bedroom on Airbnb. I used every single localized marketplace that was in the business of making real world experiences happen smoother and faster and cheaper through a technology interface, and try to learn from them. Okay, well, how are they crafting the UI? What does the copy say on the screen? What does the push notification say, and when is it sent when I forgot to put my credit card in, or when I used it once and never used it again? Or as a supplier, if I'm late, this is a big one. If I'm late for the dog walking appointment, how do they handle that? What are the mechanics of their marketplace to ensure that I'm on time to walk the dog on time? And so I would learn and apply a little bit from every one of them to our platform at GreenPal to make sure when you order a lawn mowing service, it happens on Thursday like you expect it to.
When you talk about this journey and all the lessons that you've learned, and you compare that to what you were telling me about business school, what are some of the biggest differences? The things that are top of mind for you that just aren't taught in at least the business school that you attended, that you kind of think are so important to really run a successful business?
It's the same disconnect when you're hiring. When we're hiring, I heard this somewhere, to look for, when you're a startup and you're your first 10, 20, 30, 40 people, look for romantics and pirates. And so romantics, people who are just in love with the product, in love with the idea, they know more about it than you do. They're just romantic about the mission. Or pirates, people who don't conform to the norms. They're looking for any way to solve a problem by any means necessary. They're scrappy. They're relentless. And that's what you're looking for as your first 5 to 10, maybe 20 people that you bring on board on your mission. GreenPal's still a small company. We're less than 40 people. And so that same kind of disconnect between looking for pirates and romantics versus like a well-groomed MBA with a nice corporate background at 4 big companies is the same. Is the same disconnect between what you learn in business school versus what it's really like boots on the ground, getting a business going from 0 to 1, getting your first 100K in revenue, getting your first $1 million in revenues, trying to figure out systems to get to 5 million. Like, you're not going to learn that in a traditional university setting. You're going to learn that on YouTube University from people who have done that, and you're going to spend half your time wading through the scams that don't work, and doubling down on the content that is good. And so that's kind of like the business school that, as I experienced it, was for people who are stewards of well running or at scale companies already, and they're like plugged into a machine that's already working. It's not going to teach you what you have to do to get your first 10 customers and get your first 10 credit cards and figure out how to keep those people and how to build a product to satisfy them. And the other thing I learned that was really astounding, that kind of furthered this notion, was when I was starting GreenPal, we would go to these little hackathons. Back then in 2013, 14, 15, these weekend hackathons were popular, and they're not so much anymore for some reason, but you would get a bunch of people together, and it'd be like a little networking event, and you would try to build a business in a weekend. And you would literally come there on Friday night. You'd have no idea, and you would get 2 or 3 people together. You'd come up with an idea. You'd hack together a prototype. You have to go out and get 10 customers by Sunday night. You can learn more in a weekend of doing that than you can learn about getting a business going than you can in 4 years of business school.
You said at one point there was a fear, and that fear led you to immerse yourself in all of these other different companies that are doing similar things in different industries. Does that fear that you talked about still exist today?
Absolutely. You're always ahead of your skis and punching above your weight. And it's okay to be scared as to what's around the corner. It's not okay to not have the courage to take action to deal with it. Like, hope is not a strategy. And so you can't hope it's going to be okay and hope that it works out and hope that you have the tooling and skill sets you need and things are in place. Let that fear motivate you to act inside of what's inside of your control in your little circle of influence to better prepare yourself for it. And it's a good thing. It's a natural thing, and it's okay to be scared and to have that fear and anxiety, but let that give you the courage to do the things you need to do today to be ready for it. And that's what makes it interesting. That's what makes it a story worth telling. That's what makes it fun in a way and rewarding in a way. If you didn't have those challenges, if you as the main character of this story wasn't going through these ups and downs, then it'd be pretty dull. It'd be pretty lame. And so it's in a way a good thing. And everything that I was scared of in the last 22 years of business and every challenge I ever went through, 5 years later, I was always glad it happened, because that was the thing that caused me to take the action to put me in the position where I am today.
Mm. And when you were going through that process of immersing yourself in all these different companies and learning about what they do and how they do it, all of that information that you absorb, did you write that down? How did you then curate that information? Because I assume there was a process where that information essentially works its way into some kind of MVP for what GreenPal is today.
Absolutely. And what I did was I'm a big fan of forcing functions and what I call tripwires. So these are like things that you put in your path that cause you to take action. And it's like the daily habits and the routines. You almost, like, the whole point of all of that was to have a goal of, I want a product that works, because we built a product and it was horrible. Like you pushed a button, the lawn guy wouldn't bid. If he did bid, he wouldn't show up. If he showed up, he'd do a terrible job. If he did a job at all, he'd leave the fence open and leave the dog out. There's a million things that went wrong. And so I just wanted a product that worked well on a small scale. And so that was the goal. And so, okay, how do I get there? Well, I've got to learn. There's a dozen other platforms similar to mine that are making magic happen. How are they doing it? So I need to deconstruct what they're doing. And so the goal is for my platform to be solid and to work seamless, but let's just forget about that. Let me work this process of tearing down all of these other marketplaces and reverse engineering them from the inside out. And it's going to take a year, maybe two, but if I just do one a week from the buyer side and seller side, and set that kind of like expiration date of every week. At the end of every week, I need to make a blog post about it. And so I would do a blog post on Quora or Medium or somewhere. And that was my thing. That was the input metric, was every single week we needed to do a teardown of how much you could make delivering food for Postmates. What was the workflow, the onboarding experience like? What was the order volume? What did that look like? How busy were you? What did the screens look like? Screenshots of all the key screens. What does the emails and text messages and push notifications look like? And doing like a full teardown of one platform from buyer and then seller, and then creating a blog post somewhere about it on a weekly basis was the input metric. That then got me to the output metric of, okay, now I have a much better understanding of how we need to architect GreenPal, because I have downloaded all of these best practices from all of these well-funded venture-backed startups, many of whom are public today. Some didn't make it, some went out of business. But I was able to learn like on the cheap what they were doing and apply it to what we were doing. And I almost kind of forgot. I didn't forget about what the goal was, but like goals almost don't matter. It's the weekly, daily and weekly habits and routines to get there that do.
Is that something you did at Peachtree at all as well?
In the early days, I did it every wrong way you could. And so I had to experience the pain of just organized chaos. Yeah. And the pain of, I'll never forget, it was maybe year 6 or 7 and I hadn't had a vacation in 5 years and I just wanted to go away for one weekend. and I came back on a Monday and like the business was almost cratered. Like it was just almost gone. It was like a smoldering like hole where a bomb went off, and I had to figure. I was like, man, this is no way to live. And I had maybe had 20 or 30 people at that point. It was still a small business, and so then I had to figure out a way to make this more like McDonald's, where I can go to anywhere in the world and get a Big Mac and it tastes pretty much the same. If McDonald's is one end on the spectrum and I'm on the other end of the spectrum, I got to figure out how to close that gap. And so I would just focus on one little piece of the business at a time. I would come in on Sunday afternoons and just figure out, okay, what is the number one thing that I'm always having to wrangle, that I'm always having to get my hands on. And at one time it was employee training. I would have to personally train our new recruits on the way we did things. And so I spent 6 months just creating Lawn Care University, where we could bring somebody in and train them up in 2 weeks through a series of videos, tests, on the field certifications and things of that sort. So we could get somebody up to speed in 2 weeks rather than 6 months. And so that was just an example of figuring out one piece of the business, developing a standard operating procedure around it, documenting the whole thing. And that was doing that for 5 or 6 years and operationalizing, all of the aspects of the business is one of the only things that enabled me to get the business acquired. It doesn't really happen very often in a home services business like that they get bought by a national company. So to do that, you kind of have to have them run like a well-oiled machine. One of the ways to do that is figure out how to McDonaldize your business and make it where it could run without you, and you could leave for a weekend and it still be there when you get back.
I like McDonaldize. That's a good word.
One of my favorite books is Grinding It Out by the founder of McDonald's, and that's he was an innovator in the idea of franchise systems and being able to create a standardized process for everything. And if we can all do that in our own little small businesses, it can make our lives a lot better, a lot easier.
Funnily enough, it was only, I think, last week or the week before that I watched a film which I guess went under the radar because I'd never heard about it, from about maybe 5 years ago. And I think the film's called Founder, and it has Michael Keaton in it.
One of my favorite movies.
Right, yeah. And it talks about kind of everything that you're talking about here. So whether you go for the book or you go for this film, there's a lot of information on there on McDonaldizing, is what I'm going to call it. I'm interested here in the commonalities between Peachtree and GreenPal, and you've kind of described a lot of it there about how you approach scaling those businesses. We haven't really talked too much about Peachtree and the actual location you operated in or the services you offered. So just briefly, with Peachtree, could you just describe the services and a little bit about how you scaled that business?
Yeah, there's a lot of commonalities between the blue collar experience of running a blue collar business versus running a technology business. There's a lot of things that are the same, and there's a lot of things that are different. Anything from the operations to how you get customers are very different. With Peachtree, it was about year 4 or 5 that I had an epiphany that I wasn't in the landscaping business at all. I was in the sales business. And that the landscaping was just table stakes. You have as a founder in a services business, you tend to over index on a lot of things that are just kind of like table stakes. New equipment, new trucks, uniformed employees, quality work. We show up on time. We do what we say we're going to do. We stand behind our work. These aren't value propositions. These are things that customers expect. And so it took me like 5 years to kind of get over that and to realize all of these things you busted your butt building are really just get you a seat at the table. And that really the business you're in is connecting potential customers to that value and figuring out a process and a system to better sell your services. And this is where a lot of small business owners, particularly blue collar business owners, fall short. And you see it, you see it in a lot of industries. The most well-known lawyer in town it may not necessarily be the best lawyer, but he's the one with the best marketing machine behind him. Same thing goes with the best dentist, the best skincare shop, the best, you name it. You can go to any industry. And so these business owners realize that the business they're in needs to be as good as the competitors, but the real business they're in is the sales system. And so I had that epiphany, and I thought, okay, well, I need to learn from other companies in my space, and maybe companies outside of my space. And so I would talk to other founders. I would observe how they ran their sales teams and how they prospected new clients and how they pitched their business and closed their business. And some things I agreed with and some things I didn't. And I would begin to key in and hone my sales process. And so I ran the sales process for 2 or 3 years, and then I began to codify, okay, how do we differentiate what we do? And because a lot of times landscaping maintenance can be a commodity. It's like, okay, we're just talking about cut grass here. It's not like one is much different than the other. And so when you're in a commodity service like that, it can get, you can get to a point where all you're doing is selling on price, and you're looking for ways to cut corners and cut costs and sell on price. And that's like a death spiral. And I thought, we got to figure out a way to get out of that. And so it took me a long time to figure this out, but I would figure out, what is it we're doing, and how do we help our customers get where they're trying to go? So we focused on the commercial clientele. And so we would go to apartment communities and we would say, we want to be considered, to quote, your landscaping services for this apartment complex when the contract comes up. And we're talking $50,000, $100,000 a year contracts. And we would say, what is your vacancy rate here at this community? And they would say, well, why do you ask that? And we would say, well, we're members of the Greater Nashville Apartment Association, and they tell us that the average vacancy rate for this region is 92% occupied, so 8% vacant. And they would say, well, we're at 87, and we would say, well, okay, well, what if we could develop a plan to help you get to 90, and we could get there. We have some ideas. We could enhance the beauty of the area around the model home. We can enhance the beauty around the entrance to bring people in. We can take this from a B+ place to live to an A+ place to live through proactive landscape maintenance and to work this plan. So now we've changed the conversation from what's the cheapest way to get the grass from 10 inches to 4 inches to how do we improve the actual return of this $100 million asset, and landscape maintenance is a part of that. And so we did that. It took a long time to figure that process out, and it took longer to run that process than trying to sell on price. But that's what enabled us to eventually build an 8-figure business that was still growing, that was able to get acquired. Was that sales system and reframing how we sold. And then to your point, we then began to scale the company into the region. We were no longer in Nashville, Tennessee. At the end of it, we ended up serving a big footprint, about 100-mile radius around the city. And eventually, we were going to go to Atlanta and Chattanooga and Memphis, but then the business was acquired, and that next company ended up doing that.
And with GreenPal, did you start in Tennessee in the same way as you were building out that business?
Yeah, so here I sell Peachtree, and I think I know everything there is to know about getting a business going. And I start GreenPal, and it was clearly evident that 3 months or 6 months in that this was a different game. This was, there were some things that were the same, but this is really like starting all over again. And everything I didn't know. A lot of the assumptions I had were not correct, and I didn't have the skills that I needed to take this thing from level 1 to 2. So a lot of it was working on myself and learning what we needed to do and unpacking that. And one thing I did know in my gut was, I know I had aspirations to have a nationwide platform, but there was no reason to grow this thing outside of Nashville until we figured it out. like nail it, then scale it. And if we had 100 people use it last week, 99 of them needed to be happy. And in those days, if 100 people used it, only about 15 were happy.
Right.
so we had to figure out, and it wasn't even 100, it was like 20. And so it was like, okay, 20 people had transactions last week and 18 of them are pissed off at us. Well, I don't really know what we're doing, but I do know there's no reason to take it to Atlanta or Memphis or Tampa or anywhere else until we can figure out how to make 19 and a half of those people happy out of the 20 that used it last week. And so we spent about 2.5 years figuring that out. When you hire a lawn care service, there's about 100 things that can go wrong between you hiring them and them coming out and doing a great job for you. Equipment got stolen. My helper got a DUI. I got a DUI. It rained that day. My lawnmower is too big for your fence. I don't feel like working that day just because I don't feel like working that day. It's too hot. Your grass is too tall. 100, and it goes. List goes on and on and on and on and on. And so we began to understand that all of the reasons why it sucks to hire a lawn care service are now our problem. We have to solve those with technology, and all of the reasons why it sucks to run a lawn care business, because those 100 things, that list is about 1,000 things long for the operator. And so now we have to solve all of those problems and make each one of them go away through technology. And that took a long time. And we still don't have it perfect. If 100 people, now we have thousands of people use it every day. But if 100 people use it, 99 of them are happy, but maybe 1% of the transactions goes wrong. And so everything we do is figuring out, how do we take that 1% and cut it in half?
Has there been any functionality or anything that you've introduced to the business or the technology that has helped you to reduce that number, or it helped you increase the number of satisfied customers that you think has been kind of pivotal?
In the early days, it was a lot of things that I didn't anticipate. So I came from a contractor background where it was very like dog eat dog. The competition was really, really fierce. And you would get an opportunity to submit a request for pricing for a property, and you would show up and there would literally be 3 other contractors there. And it was just really, really, really competitive. And so I thought that getting the contractors to show up and actually do the service and get paid would be the easy part. As it turns out, that was the hardest part of the whole thing. It was like, we learned in the early days that I thought we were delivering price efficiency and a more cost-effective way to get this service done. And after we talked to our first 100 customers, we realized, no, we were in the business of the case of the disappearing lawn guy and figuring out how to solve that problem. We were in the business of speed and reliability. Getting the contractor to submit a quote really fast and to show up when they're supposed to was the business we were in. So one of the first things we introduced was, okay, you've got 2 or 3 customers on our platform, and you're supposed to be there to mow Mrs. Smith's house on Thursday, and if you don't show up on Thursday, we nag the hell out of you. And in the early days, it was me calling you. It was hey, where are you at? But as time went on, we systemized these things. And so we text you every hour. Where are you? Where are you? And then if you ignore all of those, the next morning, your account is locked down. And the only thing you can do is go mow Mrs. Smith's yard. And if you don't do that, by that afternoon, your account is shut down, deleted, gone forever. You have proven yourself to not be a reliable contractor. And so you would, I mean, that was how 90% of the contractors interacted with our system until they finally got beaten into submission to understand that, no, I need to be there. I submitted my quote. I am supposed to be there on Thursday. I need to be there on Thursday. And so just creating that one roadblock in the workflow is how we cut, the number of unsatisfied customers in half. So just that one thing. And so now, now that we have thousands of people going through it every day, it's more in terms of measurement and measuring, okay, how often do these contractors show up a day early or the day they're supposed to? And then we score them and we assign them a rating, and then we promote them on the platform or demote them on the platform based on how that rating is. And the bottom 10% of contractors are cut every month. And so it's this ongoing, like, liquid fluid way of promoting the reliable service providers who take this business seriously, who want to do a good job for their clients, and demoting and expelling the bad ones.
So then, taking all of this information, because it seems to me once you've nailed what the users want, so you talked about reliability and speed, that naturally makes its way into how to market your business, I'd assume.
Exactly.
So I'd assume that key marketing messages for GreenPal are related to your reliability, trust, and speed. Is that how the process worked?
That's exactly right. So one of the only things we did correctly in the early days was we read every book we could get our hands on about trying to figure out what the hell it was we were doing. So the first thing we did is this book was just coming out, but we picked up a copy of The Lean Startup by Eric Ries and read that book, understood about 10% of it. And then came to understand that Eric Ries had a mentor, a guy named Steve Blank, and he wrote a book called 4 Steps to the Epiphany and The Startup Owner's Manual. Read those 2 books, and I understood about half of it. And so reading those 3 books, 1,000 pages of text, I came away with one thing beaten into my head, which is you have to get out of the building. You have to get out from behind the laptop and in the kitchen at the kitchen table with the person that used your product, into the Starbucks and in front of the person who used your product. And that it may only be 20 or 30 or 50 people, but you need to talk to every single one of them and let them tell you what they liked about the product, what they didn't like, what they wish it would do better, what they were expecting would happen, and what did and what didn't. And then also, more importantly, why they chose to use your product and how they normally solve this problem. And those key insights, especially in those early days, are critical because they kind of determine the vector, of what path you're going on. And in those early days, 1 degree off here or there could be the difference between success and failure because you're kind of set off on this path. And so we thought in those early days that, save $10 on your lawn mowing in Nashville, Tennessee, the cheapest way to get your grass cut in Nashville, save 10% off lawn care in Nashville. Like this was our value proposition. And talking to customers, they would tell us, no, I asked friends and family for recommendations, and none of those service providers showed up. I went on Facebook Marketplace. One guy promised to be out here, and he did, but he only did the front yard. And then so I found your property on Google, and I just used it out of desperation because it looked like I can get somebody today. And so we kept hearing that over and over again, that people would find us on Google, and if they would go to a search result engine to try to solve this problem. And the problem wasn't this burning desire to save $10 on lawn mowing. The problem was I'm about to get a letter from the city because my grass is so tall. And I've gotten ghosted and flaked on by 2 other service providers. And I need somebody to mow this before the weekend. That's the problem. And so we went from save $10 on lawn cutting in Nashville to get your lawn mowed in Nashville today without making a phone call, even if it's 4 feet tall. That's how we keyed in on the value proposition, was belly to belly conversations with customers inside of every coffee shop in Nashville, at kitchen tables, and learning and meeting them where they were at, and trying to figure out and letting that free R&D guide our decision making.
as I understand it, how many active customers do you have today? I understand it was 200,000, but that's in the notes that I have. I'm sure it's more than that.
Yeah, it's close to it's actually over 300,000 now that are using it to get lawn mowing done, and then over 30,000 contractors using it to run their lawn mowing business. And our goal is to get to 1 million. We feel like we need to get to 1 million people using it on a weekly basis to become part of that default way you do this, to kind of reach that tipping point of being in the English language in the United States anyway. Oh, your grass is 4 feet tall. Just get a GreenPal to do it. That's where we're driving.
And we're coming towards the end of our time together. For anyone listening in the US, are you operational in every state now?
Yeah, every city in the United States that's over 10, 15,000 people, you can get a lawn mowing service through GreenPal. So just go to greenpal.com and it's free to sign up. Check it out.
And just in closing, one final question for you. So this aspect of understanding what your customers want, changing and updating the platform, you've said several times that you've got this, did you say 1 million active customers is what your kind of long-term goal is?
That's where I want to be in 5 years or less. And self-funding the business is good because it's like you can't really make a whole lot of mistakes. You bring a little bit of money in and you put that money back out to work on growth. So little by little, we're still growing 30, 40%. I feel like we'll be there sooner than 5 years, but that's where I want to be.
And what are some key initiatives, whether that's functionality or marketing? What do you think is going to be key in helping you get there?
Well, first off, it's a $99 billion industry. So it's like we're just a drop in the bucket. So so we haven't reached the point of saturation to do anything wildly different, like going into other verticals or anything like that. So that's good news. The things that make it hard also make it valuable. And so that's the one thing. Search engine optimization, Google organic search is our primary channel. It's how we get over half the people that don't know about GreenPal to try it out. We still have a lot of white space left there too. We rank in the top 3 for most of our head terms, but we really want to rank 1 everywhere. And so how do we close that gap? And then the second thing is we leave a lot of money on the table in terms of people that sign up that never activate. Over half. If you sign up on GreenPal and get quotes, half the time you never hire anybody. And so we're trying to figure out how do we take that and maybe make that only 25% of the time. And so talking to people who never hired somebody and it's like we're literally laying in a bathtub full of the business we need. So there's no reason to try anything outlandish until we figure out how to activate those customers we're not activating. And then one way we think we're going to be able to do that is kind of like how Airbnb in year 5, they figured out if they could just work out the mechanics of an instant book system. You remember back in the old days of Airbnb, you had to ping the host and beg them to let you stay there for the weekend, and they would say, maybe, okay, yeah, I'll accept the booking. And it wasn't until they spent a tremendous amount of resources or building the back end infrastructure to figure out how to make that smooth, where you could just order it like a hotel room. We want to do that for lawn mowing. So right now you have to, as a consumer, you sign up on our platform and we send that invitation out to 40 contractors in your area, and then the ones that are available submit their price based on your specs. And then you get 4 or 5 quotes and you hire one. Well, that process could take 3 minutes or it could take a couple of hours. In either event, it's still a lot faster than doing it the old way, but it's that gap between 3 minutes and a few hours that we're working on reducing with a similar style of an instant book magical solution where, okay, yes, $38, book him, he'll be here at 3:00, done. And so that's what we're working on.
Well, Bryan, it's such a great concept. I've really enjoyed learning about your journey so far. I think it really is such a great idea. You've clearly executed it well so far. I have no doubt that you can achieve that target of 1 million customers. And the website for anyone that's interested is yourgreenpal.com. That will be in the show notes. You have Android and Apple apps available too. in the US stores as well. So feel free to check out all of those resources. Bryan, is there anywhere else people can connect with you?
Yeah, hit me up on LinkedIn or actually Instagram is where I hang out a lot too. Bryan M. Clayton. Just drop me a DM there.
Okay. Well, this has been the Internet Marketing Podcast. Take care.